Welcome to another OmniFocus Fitness video. My name's Nick, and today we're going to be discussing non-exercise activity thermogenesis, which is abbreviated as NEAT, and the impact of weight loss on NEAT. So that sounds like a big complicated mumbo jumbo, but don't worry. The first thing we're going to discuss is, of course, a definition for what non-exercise activity thermogenesis is, and more importantly, this video is going to be discussing at least one of the probable causes as to the stalling in weight loss. So if you're in a fat loss phase, you're losing weight, whatever, and then eventually you plateau out, well, this might be one of those reasons as to why you are plateauing out. So the title might not seem like it's somehow related to this, but you will understand in very layman terms, as well as understanding all the physiology and the reasoning behind everything by the end of the video. Now, that said, of course, my sources for everything that I'm going to be talking about are linked in the article below, which is also free and ad-free, which is awesome. And of course, these videos, of course, tend to be quite long. Of course. I like saying of course. Moving on, a menu system which is linked below as well as after this introduction. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and jump straight into the video. We are going to learn about weight loss plateaus and how NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis, affects all of it. Let's do it. So what is non-exercise activity thermogenesis, which is again abbreviated as NEAT? Well, first we need to understand metabolism in general. Metabolism is broken up into three major components. One of those components is basal metabolic rate, which makes up a vast majority, about 70% of our total metabolism is attributed to basal metabolic rate. Another aspect is the thermic effect of food. So the amount of energy or heat garnered from food kind of released, that has also about a 10% impact on metabolism, on total metabolism. And the final one, the one that we're actually interested in, is the thermic effect of physical activity. Now, the thermic effect of physical activity roughly accounts for about 20% of total metabolism. However, that is also subcategorized into two different sections. One of those sections is exercise activity thermogenesis, so that is the energy expended during exercise. So anything that's structured, planned, where you know the number of reps you're going to be doing, you know the amount of weight that you're going to be doing, you know the amount of time that you're going to be running, things like that are structured. That is exercise. Now, what we're focused on is non-exercise activity thermogenesis, which is the heat production or energy release of any activity that is not exercise, so not structured. So things like fidgeting, me moving my hands around, that's definitely activity. You can see movement, right? But it's not exactly planned. I'm not thinking, okay, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, you know, it's not planned. So those kind of things, also like fidgeting, talking about general walking, like through a grocery store, or walking from your car, walking to work, from the parking lot. I mean, things like that. Those are all things that you don't consciously really think about all that much, and it's definitely not things that you structure and plan, that you have a numerical amount for. And those things would typically be categorized under that non-exercise activity thermogenesis. Now, that said, I want to add one more point actually. You know now that TIPA, so thermic effect of physical activity, which is the total which incorporates exercise activity thermogenesis, and NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis, that makes up 20%. But I should mention the reason why this topic is so important is because non-exercise activity thermogenesis, what we're talking about, accounts for a vast majority of that TIPA. So, and again, that TIPA is about 20% of our entire metabolism. That's a big deal. So that NEAT actually makes up almost that full 20%. You'd think that exercise would, because a lot of people focus on exercise, but in the grand scheme of 24 hours or an entire week, it seems that non-exercise activity thermogenesis is far more impactful on our metabolism than really any exercise could, even for avid exercisers. So I just wanted to quick throw that in there, kind of throw kind of an impact factor. Okay. All right, let's move on, shall we? Yep. So we have established what NEAT is. We've established that weight loss does have an impact on NEAT, or NEAT has an impact on weight loss, however you want to look at that. Now, what are the reasons why? In what ways does NEAT have an impact on weight loss, or in what ways does weight loss have an impact on NEAT? Well, the first and probably the most accepted reason is if you were to, let's say you weigh 200 pounds, okay, and you want to lose 30 pounds. So at the beginning, you weigh 200 pounds, and for movement, for general movement, fidgeting, things like that, anything where you're moving your body, you have to garner enough energy or use enough energy to mobilize 200 pounds. Now, when you lose weight, now you're down to, let's say at the end goal, you're at around 170 pounds. Now your body only has to move 170 pounds. So is it going to be using the same amount of energy? No. The answer is no. It will not be using the same amount of energy. It will be using less energy than when it first started, simply because you have reduced your weight. So therefore it has to mobilize less weight. Makes sense, doesn't it? Okay, so that's one of the big reasons why NEAT tends to decrease, and therefore our metabolism tends to decrease. And because our metabolism decreases, what happens? Our caloric expenditure, which was here before, decreases, which ends up leading to a plateau, or at least a slowdown in weight loss. Now, another possible mechanism is different mechanisms like fidgeting or moving, kind of spontaneous activity. This, for example, me using my hands, or if you've got your knee in it. Okay, that just looks weird. You know how your knee sometimes taps because you're caffeinated or whatever, you feel a lot of energy. Sometimes you don't really think about it, but your knee's kind of moving a lot because you're kind of tapping your foot, for example, or you're tapping your foot to music. That's a perfect example right there. Well, it's possible that the body actually also down-regulates some of that stuff, because it's not necessarily a necessary expenditure of energy, and the body could kind of unconsciously, without you necessarily thinking about it, decrease the amount of fidgeting or spontaneous activity that you do. That being the case, that means that overall, like if you were to look at a 10-minute period or a 1-hour period, sure, that wouldn't make much of a difference. But if you look at that over a week's period of time, that's a lot of activity that your body might be reducing. So again, you were here, then you dropped here, and now you're like down here because of NEAT being decreased due to a caloric deficit. So if your body senses that it's losing weight, you're in a caloric deficit, it tries to retain as much energy and tries to down-regulate some of those mechanisms. Now that I've mentioned that stuff, those are two of the possible reasons. One of them is certainly kind of confirmed. The other one is we've got some data on, and then we've got other areas where weight loss could have an impact on non-exercise activity thermogenesis, and vice versa as well. However, the other reasons that are out there, there isn't enough data on, and we do need more data, plural, singular, whatever. We need more information, we need more studies out there to actually substantiate some of the other claims, so I'm not going to really mention them in this video, but those two reasons are certainly probably the most reliable and most accurate. Okay, that's that. Those are some of the possible reasons, and I did mention a few more in the article, which again is linked below, and of course, I'm not just talking out of my ass here, guys. Of course, check out my sources, which are linked below. This is the summary of the video for those of you that need a quick recap. If not, please subscribe and check out the attached article. Alright, I did try to make this video a little bit shorter, mainly because I'm trying to tackle some smaller subjects while I'm in school, but I'm sure there are still some of you that just want everything in a small package. So, summary section, for your ass! Oh, I'm too hyper, I'm too happy. Okay, summary section, here we go. So we talked about non-activity thermogenesis, and we talked about what that is. Really, that's really any sort of activity, any sort of energy expenditure through activity that is not related to exercise. So it's not planned, it's not structured, it's things like fidgeting, it's things like moving your arms around, it's things like walking from your car to work, things that you don't necessarily think about, but they do matter, and actually that does make up a vast majority of the activity portion of our metabolic rate. That said, does that have an impact on weight loss, and does weight loss have an impact on NEAT? So again, non-exercise activity thermogenesis. Absolutely, it does. Confirmed, yes. Now, the mechanisms by which that happens is, well, some of them are unconfirmed, but some of the confirmed ones are, if you think about it, if you lose weight, then you've got less weight that you have to move over time. So that being the case, you use less energy to move a similar body, so your body, but if you lose weight, you're going to be dropping your weight from, let's say, 200 pounds to 180 pounds or 170 pounds. In that case, then you're moving less weight, so you need less energy to move your body. Something as simple as that. Another mechanism, of course, is the possibility that your body kind of down-regulates due to being in a caloric deficit, which is necessary for weight loss. If you're in a caloric deficit for a long period of time, for example, your body starts kind of unconsciously or subconsciously decreasing the amount of spontaneous activity. So moving your arms around less, fidgeting with your knee, tapping, things like that are going to be down-regulated. Not necessarily things that you necessarily think about, but they certainly do have an impact in the long term. So that is that. And that's really the reason why, or one of the reasons, at least one of the reasons why we plateau, because we end up expending less energy in that NEAT, which then leads us to have a smaller caloric expenditure, which then means that we would lose at a slower rate, even to a point where we plateau out. Okay, this video is actually pretty short in comparison to my other videos, and I'm going to try and keep it that way. So if you found the information useful, please subscribe to the channel. It certainly means quite a bit to me when people subscribe. Man, oh man, does that motivate me. Even one subscription really means quite a bit to me. And feel free to comment below. I mean, I'd love to hear from you guys and really get some feedback and kind of hear you guys out. Yeah? Okay, so that said, subscribe, like, share the video if you want, and I will see you in the next video. Stay focused. See ya.